Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you listen to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we strive to learn how to stop doing deals and start closing for life. Today, we have a fantastic guest with me today, Mr. Eli Schwartz. Eli, thank you so much for being with us, sir.
It's great to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, sir. What do you do? Eli, tell our folks that are listening, what is it you do?
God, I wish I knew. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what am I supposed to do today?
When I grow up, I want to.
Actually, I'm kind of doing the thing I want to do when I grow up, which is do what I want, like be happy doing what I'm doing. So what I do is I help companies, usually large companies, identify whether there is going to be people searching for them online using a free search engine like Google, and if there's a revenue channel to be created. Now, I know many people think, well, everyone searches online, so I should put effort into it. And I don't think that's the case. I know we'll dig into some of what you do and specifically in investment areas around real estate. And I don't think most people should even care about free searches online. But typically I work with later stage, large companies, ideally public companies that maybe are less budget conscious about this and are ready to invest, and identify whether there is a business that they should invest in. And by invest, it means have many employees and spend a lot of money. And what sort of revenue would be coming out of that. And if there is a business case for it, then we build it. And
so basically an ROI analysis in advance before allocating capital to something that may just be a loser.
Exactly. It's a quick ROI analysis. It's just like we have a conversation and then I say, how do people find you? And they say, well, look, they meet us at the trade show. And I'm like, well, why do you want to spend $1 million on being visible online? So it's that kind of quick thing. So then I help them build it. It's usually a 1 to 2 year process. Wow. With the product teams, their growth teams, their marketing teams. And from that, they can generate billions of dollars. But you're not going to generate billions of dollars overnight. It's really this, I'd say very few companies even get to that point, but they do start unlocking. If they do some of this, they start unlocking tens to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Good stuff. So it basically, in summary, it is a slow consuming, arduous process that uses a lot of capital, but is capable of generating a lot. So you got to be willing to take and put the cash and the time in up front to do it. Got to ask though, man, what got you started doing that?
So I always wanted to work for myself, but I never saw a pathway forward. So when I was in college, I minored. There wasn't a major in it. I minored in entrepreneurship. I figured if I minor in entrepreneurship, it'll strike me. I'll be an entrepreneur. That didn't work out. When I went to grad school, I did the same thing. I think I had the concentration, I got an MBA, so I had a concentration in entrepreneurship. That didn't work out either. No one was like, oh, I want to bestow upon you multiple millions of dollars and you can just work for yourself and hopefully it turns, you get some ROI on that. So no, that didn't happen either. So I always wanted to do something for myself and had no way of doing that. So I got my first job right out of school and I was working for this company where they helped match companies that want to buy leads with people that knew how to generate leads online. So think like, I'm a bank, and this is pre-2008. I know you talked about 2008 in your podcast. Pre-2008, there were banks. So I joined this company. There were banks like Countrywide that were very interested in paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for subprime leads. But if someone had excellent credit, they were only willing to pay $4. I was baffled. I asked my manager during training. They're like, just go with it. That's the way it works.
They want to throw money at you. Just go with it.
Yeah, the worse the credit is, the more we pay. So my job was to find affiliates online or people online that knew how to generate those kinds of leads and then work with them and partner with them and have them build out websites and drive those leads to our clients.
So guys, what we're looking for is deadbeats. This is our target demographic.
bait and switch, get them to the shady salespeople. They'll figure out how to close that mortgage on a house they shouldn't be able to buy. So I'm doing that. And I started learning about what my affiliates were doing. And I said, wait a second, you go and do these Google ads, you pay Google $1 and you make a lead that pays you $600. Tell me more. So I hit all my sales numbers, and then I'd sit there on the phone with my affiliates, and they taught me everything. They taught me how to do SEO. They taught me to do paid marketing. That's really all that existed then. And then from there, I felt like I'd learned enough that I could call myself a digital marketer. So I went to the 2006 version of LinkedIn and updated it. I'm now a digital marketer. I'm no longer in sales. And I started applying for jobs as a digital marketer. I couldn't really get past an interview because I was not. But a startup took a bet on me, and I joined mostly to do business development and sales, and then ended up doing all the marketing. So that's how I got started in that. And then I was very fortunate in that I ended up at a large company. And that large company was SurveyMonkey, where I got to do the same thing and lead, all of their organic efforts, all their SEO efforts. They had never, ever done this online. And I was able to build out the process for how they were going to and how they should do this. And in that role, I was there for almost 7 years. We generated over $1 billion from the efforts I made. So that's how I got started.
Would you say that's where your success came from, was going through that process, or would you attribute it to anything else?
Hey, it's all of that. I mean, it came from there. A portion of that was luck, so I didn't have the academic and the career pedigree to even get that job at SurveyMonkey. The reason I got that job at SurveyMonkey was because the recruiter that had hired me at the lead generation company happened to be the head recruiter at SurveyMonkey. So, there was a job in between. There was a startup in between, 4 years in between, where actually 6 years in between. And when I applied for the job, a job that I would have been automatically rejected for because I had not gone to Harvard and I didn't have a computer science degree, the person I knew recognized my name and passed me forward. And from there, I was able to get past. I had enough potential to score the job. So a lot of things have contributed to that success. Say another thing that really contributed to where I am today is that I developed a process, and I didn't just kind of roll with it. So while I was at SurveyMonkey building this process, I acknowledged it was a process. I started writing it down, I started sharing it, and I started consulting on the side. And that process is what people paid me for, and that's what I do today.
Love it. So what do you like best about what you do?
I actually really, really love the people part of marketing, understanding what makes people tick, and then from building things around it. So like I said earlier, when I work with companies and try to understand whether there is a market for them, I like to get into the heads of their customers and understand who their customer is. And then from there, you build it.
Oh my God. Yeah, man. I mean, when I speak on real estate, I say, look, guys, I'm going to talk about something very controversial here, something you probably have never thought about. Who is your customer and what makes them come to you in the first place?
Yeah, that's actually the new book I'm working on. We're modifying. It's going to include AI in it. And one of the things I have in this, and I call it the avatar quest. So I'm working on this avatar quest. You understand who your customers, and then you define all of your marketing efforts from there. One of the pieces in this proposal, because it's right now it's just a proposal, is that we applaud companies when they do the undercover boss thing. So I just saw a post on LinkedIn, the CEO of Lufthansa. I don't know if you've ever flown Lufthansa. I wouldn't say it's the best airline, but the CEO of Lufthansa went on Lufthansa and acted like a flight attendant. But he didn't just act like a flight attendant. He told everyone he's the CEO of Lufthansa. So he didn't actually get the real undercover boss experiment. And then he went on LinkedIn and posted about what a hero he was. My feedback on that is, why are you a hero? This is the product you sell. You're flying private. Your customers are flying on, most of them are flying economy. You need to know what your customers are experiencing. That's what every business is doing. Yeah,
no, I mean, I could not agree more. I don't know what it is, if it's a PC culture thing where people feel like they can't, like I tell agents, hey, look, guys, we're going to start making assumptions about our customers before we ever meet them. If you feel like that's you judging somebody, or get over it, because I got to tell you what, I used to be in the restaurant business. I used to make assumptions about I used to assume, Eli, you ready for controversial? I used to assume that people that would come in my restaurant might be disproportionately, compared to the rest of society, they might be disproportionately hungry. And you know what? It turns out that restaurants tend to see more disproportionately hungry people than, say, the video rental store. Crazy talk, I know. And so, I would say, look, and here's the thing. I found out that whole hangriness thing, people being hungry and angry, it was a problem. They'd come in and they'd be mean to the service because they were hungry. And then you feed them and they'd be okay. So you know what we did? we judge these people in advance. And because we judge these people might be hungry, we put bread on the table. So the reason when you see bread on the table, understand somebody judged you before they ever met you and decided you're probably going to be hungry. Here's some bread, right? And it's just a simple thing, but we don't do that. And real estate is really, really bad at this. They're so busy on sales techniques that they don't actually try to take it into it, who that person is, that they're going to, what is my, as you said, avatar? I don't think, like, who is Joe customer? What's the thing that makes him pick up the phone? To me, it's that they've identified they have a real estate problem. Well, if that's the case, I need to meet that. I need to be solving that problem as opposed to just coming in there and being their buddy and friend. And so, yeah, no, it's a thing. So I love what you're talking about, man.
Yeah, I think the worst place you feel this is when you go to a car dealership. They're so trained financing, and you're like, well, let's talk about the car. Let's. Like, you're trying to tell me how I'm going to save $3 a month if I finance one specific way. I don't even decide if I want the car. Trying to put me in a car I don't want. And the one thing I think they do a terrible job of is they're trained, get them in the car. You got to do a test drive. Well, what about all the people who have test driven their neighbor's car? They already know what they want. Now you got to carry that experience forward. And if you keep harassing them, get in the car, do a test drive, you chase them out. You send them to a dealership that gives them what they want.
Absolutely. No, it's the only time I've ever been sold a car. And I say sold a car. I'm a car guy. Like, I know what I want before I get, like, the problem was I actually went in and wanted the car anyway, and I shouldn't have gone in the showroom in the first place. It's one of those kind of purchases. The brand new Corvette convertible had come out years ago. And so I walk up, I'm looking at the car, and actually the story's in my book, actually. And I don't even hear, I feel the sales guy coming. You know, like, your moment of enjoying looking at this beautiful car has now come to an end. And now somebody's going to take and put sleaze all over you as they try to sell you this car. The guy comes up and I tell him, hey, look, man, I know how it works in these places. I know you guys are in rotation and who's up. Just tell him something terrible about me. Tell him I'm a serial killer. I've got no money, whatever. Like, I'm here to take and fix the plumbing. I don't care what you tell him, but just so you don't lose your spot. I don't want to do that to you. I'm not buying a car. Guy says, look, man, it doesn't really matter with these guys. Look, I'm not going to try to sell you a car, but let me tell you about it. Cause this is one of the first ones we got. I got one myself. He showed me his, right? I said, let me tell you about it. Right. And so I'm a car guy. He starts telling me, and like, he knew his stuff too. Like, it was cold. He knew the car, right? They had a heads-up display with a lateral G meter. You could tell how many G's you were pulling in a turn on a heads-up display on the windshield. This is fighter pilot crap, right? The top would go down while the car was in gear and still move, like all this stuff. First car I'd ever seen where you just push the button and the car starts. This is back in like the early 2000s, right? I bought a car because the guy didn't take, and he never mentioned finance. Like you're talking about, he had a bespoke answer for me. He figured out right away. He made assumptions about even the question that I asked immediately changed how he was going to take and approach me. And so, you know, it wasn't like, well, how much is it going to cost? I didn't ask that question. He was like, it's a beautiful car. I said, yeah, that's a great car. No, I love the stuff that they're doing. He's like, well, the weight distribution. I said, yeah, they moved the transmission. Oh, yeah. And he launches into the technical, right? Because he's not a one-trick pony just looking to make a sale. You know, he knows what he's doing, right? It's such a different approach, but sadly, so few approach it that way.
Exactly. And everyone's always looking at close them. That's why I love when you go to certain stores like the Apple store. They're kind of salesy, but none of them are commissioned, and you feel it. They're just so like they're there, and then you go to some stores, you know they're commissioned because they just follow you and harass you and they upsell you.
Absolutely. No, you know, you could pull open the covers in your bed tonight, and there's the salesman popping out of your bed. Like, are you sure you don't want them? You know, like it's enough. Well, let me ask you this, Eli. What do you like best about what you do?
So I really like building things. I really like, you know, most of the clients that I've been successful with. I come in and when I say I'm able to create $1 billion, I know I'm able to create $1 billion for them because they didn't exist before I partnered with them. So I come in, we identify what the thing it is that we're going to build, and then we build it, and then it's successful, and then we've created something new. Yeah, of course, other people take credit for it. Like there's a public company I worked with. They had never, ever thought about how they were going to get people naturally to their brand. They'd only thought about, we're huge. We do a lot of advertising. Everyone knows us. At 5 years ago, they were the largest brand in the space. They completely ignored anybody arriving at them organically. We built something. It took us 9 months before we even had anything to look at. And now they fired all the people like every other tech company out there. And this thing is still driving probably $50 million a year in revenue. So I look at that and I stumble across, I'm like, that would never have happened had I not started working with them. Together, and that wasn't my idea, I was part of the team, but together we came up with this idea. Together we decided what to build. We built it. The team is all gone. Everyone's gone. I've been gone from them for 2 years, and it is still making so much money. So I love that. I love creating something and seeing it work.
That's fantastic. What do you think makes you good at it, though?
The people part, really like asking those questions and understanding what's going to work for the people. And then the second thing, and I know most marketers, most consultants hate this part. I actually love the sticky part where you're dealing with the employees of the company, the people with the egos. I love that. I love in my book, I open my book with a story where I just joined SurveyMonkey. And, I'd gone from the startup where there were 20 people. What I said went. I was the only person in my job. I reported directly to the CEO, and we were all on the same team. It was like we couldn't even leave the office. We couldn't leave the office until everyone left the office. It was like this little family. So everyone's got to do that one time. After that, you got to get a real job. And then I go to SurveyMonkey. At the time, it was 100 something employees. Wasn't that big. Now it's got a few thousand. And I came up with, I start my job, look around, what am I going to solve so I can show these people that I'm worth the
you
salary.
belong. Yeah.
Got to find some low-hanging fruit. So I found low-hanging fruit. I found an easy technical thing that should be fixed. At my startup, I would have scrolled over to someone's desk. It would have been fixed. Now here am I at this company. First time I'm again at a larger company. Found out who needs to fix this thing. Walk over to this person. Say, hey, here's this little technical problem that's causing us these issues. We fix this technical problem. It'll unlock something. I don't remember exactly what the details were. And this guy turns to me and he says, marketing does not get to tell engineering what to do. And they turned back to his computer and ignored me. And I was like, that's it. I just got this job. I just left this startup, got brand new health insurance, and this is going to fail. I can't get this one guy to do anything. So I thought about the nuclear option, which I would never recommend anyone do, which is I just got hired by the people, chief technology officer. I could go back to her and say, hey, George is blocking me. So could you just tell him who's boss? And then I thought about, all right, that's going to work this one time. I'm going to press, hopefully I'm even right. I'm going to press some people. And then this guy's going to hate me forever.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I came up with a diplomatic way of doing this. Instead, I asked, I went back to him. I called him at lunch. What do you think about? What do you think we should do? Why do you think what you're doing is right? Weeks later, he did it. And he admitted that hey, I had the right idea to begin with. He ended up taking credit for it. But when he left the company, he still remembered that story of how he let me be get my first win. So I love those things. I love joining companies where, I come in the first meeting and someone battles me. They're like, you're completely wrong about your entire area of expertise. I read this book. And some people might be like, well, I guess this isn't going to work. You got a really cranky person in the room. And I look at that as well, this isn't just about building something and making a channel. This is about, I want to take cranky person and get them on my side.
Absolutely. Win them over.
That's the thing that really gets me going. One of the things that I do a little coaching, I know I should do more coaching, but I only do a little bit. I love when I'm coaching people in marketing roles and they have to write letters to their CEO. I love when they get terrible for them. I know it causes them sleepless nights, but they get an email from the CEO that's one of these one-liners of I was looking at the data. What the hell? That is one's going to keep anyone, especially when it comes on a Friday night. And then
that's the weekend wrecker right there.
Yeah, that's a terrible CEO. But I love okay, let's figure out what the CEO's problem is. Ignore their problem and write an answer that impresses them. I like those challenges. It's an easy thing for me to say I like that challenge because if I'm wrong, I didn't get fired. Unfortunately, they bear the brunt of it. But I like those challenges, and I don't get to do that enough as a consultant because I have no responsibility for those. So I love that.
Cool. I'm laughing because it's something that I do too when I'm speaking. When I have a room full of people, I actually, in my own head, this is how I have fun every time I go out, is I find the person who has the worst body language in the room, the person that looks like they would rather be anywhere else in the planet, but listening to me talk. And I'm like, if I can bring that guy around, if I can bring that lady around by the end of the day, it's been a good day. And so, it just gives you something, I don't know whether you want to call it competitive to shoot for as you go through, your 3-4 hour talk. And by the end, they come, hey man, wow, like you're like, all right, that's how it's done.
Yeah,
So
so I spent a couple of years in Asia. So while I was at SurveyMonkey, I moved over to Singapore and was responsible for our marketing in Asia. So I had a typical presentation I'd given in many different places in America, and there were some laugh lines in it. And I usually say it, then pause, and people would giggle, or I'd get an emotional response. Asian audiences in Asia aren't as emotional when like they sit properly and they just pay attention to the speaker and they didn't laugh. And the first time I did it, it's like, what the hell? This is really
what's
funny.
wrong with these people?
I was like, what's no? I didn't say what's wrong with these people. I said, what's wrong with me? Did I do it?
What did I do wrong?
Did I speak too fast? Did I say it out of order? And I did another one. I got this stony response, and I was like, I got to do something. So I came up with tricks to get me information that they're paying attention. So one of the tricks I did is I would bury little things in my slides. Like best practice, you're always supposed to like put big words on your slides so the person all the way in the back of the audience can see what you're saying and they can see your slide. I made it really small. So people in the back would stand up and squint, and I'm like, they're paying attention.
There we go.
I would put little things on the slide. I'm like, and here's the thing. This is what I use. Check out this URL. And they would stand up and take pictures of it because they need
to zoom it in. Yeah.
Little signs for me that I knew people were paying attention. The other things I would do is because I would say they paid attention and it was more of a compliant audience. And I don't have this as much in America where like you say, can everyone please clap? And you're like, no, all of you. And like, you get like more than 2/3. They don't really do it. I'd say in Asia, every time I asked for anything, I'm like, could everyone please stand up? 99% stood up. So I incorporated more of that into my presentation because I needed it for my feedback that I wasn't speaking to Zoom.
Oh my God, the webinar
thing. Like I'm speaking to Zoom. Is anybody even on here? Like, is anybody looking? Are they? So yeah, but that was good practice for that.
So yeah, no, man, that is so true. That whole speaking to Zoom, you have 700 people on a webinar, all you see is your own face, is definitely brutal. I agree with you. American audiences, like I'll ask a question, I'll say raise your hand. It's like a yes no question. Who agrees, some kind of thing, and like 1/3 of the hands go up. All right, who disagrees? And like 10% of the hands go up. Who's not going to raise their hand no matter what I say? And a few hands go up, and it's just it's the fun you have to have when you have a non-compliant audience, is to recognize, hey, look, guys, I know you're doing this, whatever.
That's where I like to build those things in. So like, their phones are in their hand. So you tell them something once and then people, they're kind of checking it out. Like, what did I miss? Like they go on the phones, like you Google this and then it's those little responses to get them engaged.
Yeah.
I love those things. And I love that about marketing. I love like triggering people and making them act.
There you go. So let's kind of a change of pace here. What do you see as the opportunity in the market today?
Oh, there's so many opportunities. I mean, I'd say like AI, everyone is looking into AI and like, oh, AI is it, that's it. We're just gonna have computers talk to computers. And I think so many people are missing the opportunity of AI, which is it can be an extension of humans. It's going to be a way to do better human things. Like, for example, I recently canceled Comcast. There's all these jokes about canceling Comcast, but I'd never experienced it because I'd never canceled Comcast. So I tried to cancel Comcast. I couldn't cancel Comcast because I called on the phone. I talked to all the bots and I'd say, I want to cancel. And they'd be like, well, here's how you would cancel. Press 1 if you want to cancel. And then I'm stuck in this loop. And then finally I'm like, can I talk to a person? And they're like, due to high call volume. And then they hang up on me. So I couldn't do that. So then I tried the online chat bot. And it was like, oh, you want to cancel? Here's a great article about canceling. Again, stuck in this doom loop. I finally did cancel because I went to the Comcast store. I handed my modem in. I'm like, do whatever you got to do, but I
don't want to pay this anymore.
Yeah, I finally went to AT&T and I got fiber. Like I should have done it years ago. I'd never canceled before, so I didn't know all the jokes. I didn't know why it was so hard to cancel. But I'd say let's say Xfinity's missing is they have all these bots. They have these chat bots. They have these phone bots. They could be learning from the phone bots.
Yep.
Because now instead of saying, oh, I heard you say the word cancel. Here's an article about cancel. They can say, why do you want to cancel? And that can feed into the bot. And I think that's the opportunity. I think the best way of doing marketing, and you've seen this when you were in the restaurant business, you're talking one-on-one to customers. That's the best way of learning. What do people like? Why do they like it? Because you ask them not a quantitative question, you ask them a qualitative question. So AI allows us to ask qualitative questions as if we're people, and incorporate that. So I'm excited by, I don't think enough companies are going to do it, but I'm excited by the potential of extending our human capabilities to interact with customers, but keep the people in the background. Don't just say, oh, it's robots talking to robots, we're done. We can fire all our back office people because the robots will do it for us.
Yeah. No, I think that there's going to definitely be some hills to climb with that. We'll see. I agree. It's very interesting. What do you think? What are the most important things you've learned in the process of doing what you do?
So there was a company I was recently talking to. So the SEO, the concept of SEO has been around, let's say 22 years, right? I think Google was founded in 1997, 1998, so around that, right? And it's 2020. Yeah. So 25 years or so, Google's been around. So people have been doing this for almost since the beginning. And I've met some people who've been doing it before, like Google existed, because Google wasn't the first search engine. Everyone thinks it's always been done before. And I love talking to companies. I was recently talking to a company in the event ticketing space. Event tickets have existed long before the internet existed.
Sure.
And I told this company they should be doing SEO, and they said, why would we do it? All of our competitors have been doing it for years. The mistake that so many make is they think someone else has already done it, so therefore they're not going to do it. They're not even going to try. I think, for one, everyone assumes that everyone else is doing it and good at it. That assumption is totally wrong. The second thing I've learned is that, and this is in my book, this concept of blue ocean. So I don't know, have you ever read the book Blue Ocean Strategies?
I've heard of it. I'm not sure if I've read it or not. I've read a lot of books. They pay to get it.
It's a super nerdy book. So I would read the 2,000 word summary online on Blue Ocean Strategies rather than read the actual whole Blue Ocean book. But it's a concept of like a red ocean is full of sharks and everyone's going after each other and that's all bloody. And you're competing on price and you're competing on little kind of features. When you have a blue ocean, you're the first one that created something. You can do whatever you want. You can charge whatever you want. I forget if they use the example in the first book, but Uber is a great example of a blue ocean, or Lyft, whoever came first. You have taxis. Taxis are, you go to New York and the taxis chase each other. Like, I want to get that fare. I see someone about to walk out of a building. I see them holding an umbrella. The prices are fixed, so they can't do much on prices. Maybe car services can adjust the prices, but taxis, it's totally irrelevant. Then Uber comes out there, and Uber's like, you just need an app. You don't even need cash. You don't even need to be on the street. You could be in your bed. And they owned it. Or again, Lyft might have been first. They kind of disagree with who's first, but they owned it because that was a blue ocean. So I think when it comes to digital marketing, especially SEO, there's a lot of blue oceans. You just have to find the blue ocean. And the way you find the blue ocean is to talk to your potential customers and say, what is it that you really want? And then you build that experience for them. In my book, one of the examples I give is Zillow. So, and the reason I like Zillow is this job I had right after college, right after grad school, in the lead space, in the mortgage lead space, you had all these kind of affiliates I worked with, these shady actors that figured out how to get a hold of email lists and bid on keywords that weren't really the right keywords and inject some NSFW stuff into their websites. And you're like, oh, I could use a mortgage. And they fill out a mortgage lead. Zillow looked at that market and they said, well, this is a really dirty competitive market. What if we really understood what users wanted when they wanted a mortgage? And then we built that product for them. And then we have this captive audience. And then we can sell them a mortgage. And that's what Zillow did. They built this entire product experience around home values. So you could do it on your house or someone else's house or a house that you want to buy. And then you're like, well, this is very helpful. Now I understand. Can I afford this house? And then there's a button that says click to get a mortgage. And that's your captive audience. So that Zillow created that blue ocean. And I think in every space, there's something. And then as every blue ocean becomes red, it opens up more ideas for blue oceans. And the only way you unlock those ideas is you find out what your users want. You really you put the bread on the table, they're hungry. So all those kinds of things, who do they want? What do they want out of whatever the buying experience they want, and create it for them. So that's a big assumption that many make, that it doesn't exist. This is too competitive. I got to go do something else. And I don't think we'll ever see that.
Interesting stuff, man. Interesting stuff. So maybe a little bit of a change of pace here. What do you think you're most passionate about? What do you think you're most proud of in life, in business, that you've done?
I think you've had a similar experience writing a book, because I think I've met so many people that are currently writing a book or want to write a book. Mm-hmm. And so few people actually write the book and release the book. And, you know, when it came out, I really felt like this is the first big thing I did in my entire career. I started, did it, completed it, and have something tangible to show for it. So I'd say that's the thing I'm most proud of. And, you know, I wrote the book with the right expectations. I don't know how you did your book. I did a hybrid publishing my book. I thought only 100 people were going to read it. It was going to be a big, thick business card that I was going to give out for free. So I was honest in my book, and I wrote my book from the heart. Didn't write my book for this potential audience of millions of people that I never thought would read the book. And I've been surprised to see that my book it continuously sells. And I just learned this thing recently on another podcast. If you look at well, actually, I'm going to ask you a question. How long do you think it takes for a nonfiction book to hit its peak?
I have no idea.
You could guess.
6 months.
So according to this author, it's 6 years. Oh. And the way he tracked it was he took the names of like famous nonfiction books, popular nonfiction books, and put them into Google Trends. And it's only after 6 years do you see his popularity peak. I did this when I heard this. I looked at my own book and I saw that when it first came out, it wasn't that popular, but it continues to grow in popularity. It's still not peaked. My book's been out for 2 years. So that's the thing I'm most proud of, that I did it. Like I have it. I'm middle of writing this other book, but I don't have it. A lot of things could come up and make me quit, but at least I did that one. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's one of the harder things to do. And I was speaking to somebody recently. He said to me that he gave me statistics like, 50% of the population says they want to write a book. And of that 50%, like half of 1% actually, complete a book. And then of that group, how many of them are actually published? And there's actually fewer published authors than there are PhDs, which I thought was a really cool thing. I'm like, well, I didn't go get a doctorate, but, thanks to McGraw-Hill for publishing my book. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. My wife wrote a book too. I told her the same thing. So she was trying to get into a PhD program, and she was trying to get in a very specific PhD program that admitted 3 students a year. And she got all the way through. Like she did the interview. She got interviewed by all the other potential the people that have been in the program. So essentially she made it to the final round. It's not like her application was rejected at the start. And then she got rejected. And I said, you know what? PhD program it's a 5-year, 6-year program. You don't know what you would have gotten out of it. You write a book, and it doesn't take as long, and you can do more with it. And she is doing more with it. So I that's a great stat. I never heard that before, that there's less published authors than PhDs. Yeah. The PhD route to the people that want it, that's tough. Yeah, no, to me, I don't know what the ROI on that looks like. As an investor, I always look at allocation of scarce resources, a huge time and money commitment, and the loss of time value of that money. I have to really get paid back really well on the backside of that thing for this to take and make any sense. And so that's always an interesting conversation that nobody is ready to have when they enter college, because that's not something we teach people to consider when it comes to choosing their career. We've opted for the Disney Channel method. Follow your heart. Whatever it tells you is right. And I just don't know that jives. Yeah. I don't think that works out when you hear about the student loan rates and they're like, well, I only make $60,000 a year. I'm like, I don't know what career you chose or what you chose to study that was only going to make $60,000 a year when you were taking on $60,000 a year in college debt. So a master's degree in women's studies, huh? And you thought there was ROI there. Gotcha. Yeah. And now you're working in a daycare center. Not that that's a bad job. Oh, no, it's just may not have needed that master's in women's studies. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the big takeaway. Like, what is, in business, you invest capital always with some end goal in mind. I mean, maybe you don't hit the end goal. Maybe it's, a bad idea. We're going to try advertising on billboards. So we allocate capital to that, and it either brings ROI or it doesn't. But we know on the way in that what we're trying to do. They don't teach people to take and look at their career and their educational choices that way. And it really puts people in a bad position as they're starting. I mean, they're literally starting life off with negative points on the board. They have to take and start scoring just to take and get back to zero. It's brutal.
And they talk about predatory lending. I honestly, I think that there's more predatory lending in the educational space than there ever was in the real estate space.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think the biggest thing that, people get into this debt is because they didn't realize it was a debt. Like, I paid for school on my own. I think for 2 seconds I thought about studying math because I was really bad at math, and I started getting better at math. I'm like, well, I should say this. And I'm like, but I'm paying for this myself. What am I going to get? So I steered myself right back into business because how can I justify? And I was like serving food. I was doing a lot of stuff to pay for my school. I was serving food in the school cafeteria. I actually had a stockbroker's license, so I was making $10 an hour answering the phone for this wealth manager. He had all his coke addicted clients who would call and say things like, I need to buy a car. Can you do this trade for me? So because I had a license, I was able to do that. And I'm like, you bought a car last month. I need another car. I'm like, okay. And then I go back to, my coworkers, because it's a college job, and they'd be like, oh, she buys a car every month. It's cocaine. That's her thing. But I was not going to major in math or literature when I had to do that.
Yeah, man, that is one of the things that blew me away. Honestly, a quick story. I'm taking literature, and literature is one of the classes. I love literature. I mean, I think literature is great. Like, there's some great classics. A lot of the things that are considered classics, I consider garbage. But who the hell am I? It's like art. I look at something and I'm like, well, I know people want to pay 25 million for it, but me, it looks like somebody puked on a canvas. So I realize, like, I'm not the end all be all when it comes to this stuff. But I remember taking the literature class. And the teacher would ask people to read something, and then they'd ask what the story meant to them. And no matter what anybody said, she's like, oh, wow, what an interesting interpretation. I'm like, I've written a book. When I wrote that, I had a specific idea that I wanted to put in your head when you read this. I didn't want you to take and interpret it your way. I was going for something very specific. And so, like, how the hell can everybody be right? This doesn't make, we're paying you whatever it costs for this class for you to tell us that no matter what we come up with is correct. Here's the crazy thing. Half the kids didn't even read the book. All they did was come in and make something up. And, oh my gosh, what an interesting interpret. Oh.
And now they have $150,000
in debt. Yeah, that's their little joke. Come in and give them affirmation for $150K in the hole. Way to go. It's crazy talk, man. But let me ask you this. If you could give our listeners one piece of advice, one thing, what would it be?
So I'm taking us back to where we started.
Always a good place to go.
We're not continuing with our college tangent here. So the one thing I always like to say, and you probably have a broad base of listeners, mostly in real estate, because that's usually what we talk about. I would say, do not spend any money on digital marketing unless you can justify the ROI.
Yeah.
So I said I work with large businesses. What I do with small businesses is I usually convince them not to spend any money whatsoever. There was someone I was talking to recently. I said this, and he's like, but I have an SEO agency. Pay them $5,000 a month. They do a good job. And I said, it'd be okay. After a year, you've paid them $60,000. Can you point to $60,000 that you pulled out of those efforts? And he could not. Yep. And in most cases, you can't. I would say almost everyone in the real estate business should not be having an SEO agency, should not be doing digital marketing, because there's no logical flow. So if you're in real estate, you have one of three audiences. You have, if you're selling, you're looking for buyers. If you're buying, you're looking for sellers. And if you are in management, you're looking for people to occupy your property. Or actually, if you're in management, you're looking for people to occupy your properties. And the fourth would be, if you're raising money, you're looking for investors. Mm-hmm. Except for the management part of it, it's hard to logically see that audience using search or even social to discover your value prop. So no seller who's sitting on a property is going to be like, oh, it's time for me to sell my property. Let me go Google, or let me go on Facebook, or let me go on TikTok and see who to sell this to. No buyer is going to say, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to Google for buildings. Like that's not really going to happen. And then from an investor side, no one's like, oh, my great aunt just died. I'm sitting on $100,000. Let me go find out how I can waste this money. That's not happening. So yes, you may be sold by an agency that says, well, you have a website, you have to optimize that website, but for what?
Yeah. What's the road to return?
Yeah. So I know SEO. It's something that I know better than most people. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest expert, the one keyword and the only keyword I care about for my own personal website is my name. Because I don't think anybody's going to Google like SEO expert, land on my site and be like, that's it. I'm giving that guy money. Like,
That's the guy.
I don't want that to happen. I want someone to be like, I heard of Eli Schwartz. They Google for it. They see my website. They sign up for my newsletter. They go to my LinkedIn. That's all part of the flow. That's the only word I care about. If I don't rank on my own name, that's bad. But I'd say, like, you really want to think about what is going to come out of those efforts. Not like, did you do a good job? Did you get an A+ from your Google score? Did you, spend money at a good cost? None of it matters if you're not getting the ROI you want. Now, sometimes the ROI could be branding. I want everyone to know I exist, so maybe that's worth it. Maybe you spend $5,000 a month and you get that awareness. But if you don't know what that awareness is and whatever that is that you're going to be getting for the money you spend, don't do it at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it falls under the heading of the kind of thing like winning most likely to wear Argyle socks in high school. Yeah, you won that, but what does it mean? It's meaningless. Like you want to take and get something, graduating with a 4.0, that maybe has some value on the other end. Other things are just not that important. So let me ask you this, Eli, you've already given us a book. What one book or movie would you recommend?
So it's the book that really defined how I act as a consultant and how I think of as a consultant. And I think it's relevant for anyone that sells something to other people. And the book is $1 Million Consultants. It's written by a guy named Alan Weiss. Alan Weiss first wrote this book about consulting. I think his first book came out in 1989. So he's up to the 6th version of $1 Million Consultants. Oof. He's in his 80s. I actually hired him to be my coach for a couple of years ago. And this book changed the way I approached consulting. So one of the ways that many people do consulting, and they do this wrong, is they do hourly based consulting. So they say, I'm going to do your website and I would like to earn $100 an hour. So I'm going to price this out at the amount of hours it'll take me. So it'll take me 10 hours, it'll be $1,000. In $1 Million Consultants, Alan Weiss really he stresses that you want to do value-based consulting. So if I'm going to make a website that's going to drive $1 billion and I only charge $1,000 for it, I have not extracted any amount of the value that I'm helping you drive. So I read this book, his first book, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And from then I increased all the pricing. I changed all the way I did everything. And the way he ended up being my coach was I had read one of his recent books during the pandemic. He wrote a number of books, they're all bestsellers. Wrote this book, $1 Million Consultants Bible. Similar idea to the other one. When I was done reading it, I was like, I really like as an author when people email me and say, hey, I read your book. I really appreciate it. Like, I love hearing these emails. And I'm sure you get them. Like, they warm your heart better than an Amazon review. So I was like, I'm going to email this guy and tell him that I made more than $1 million in my entire consulting career because I read his first book. I just want to say thank you. I read another book. He responds like 10 seconds later and says, hey, really appreciate your note. He's a great sales guy. I'm holding a mastermind in 2 months from now on a beach. If you come to my mastermind, I'll coach you for free for the next year. So I was like, well,
wow.
I already know that I generated an ROI from him because I read his books. So that's worth it. It was a pretty expensive mastermind, but I'm like, that's worth it. I will go to the mastermind and see what I can learn from the master. And like, I'd say if you are in any sort of consulting kind of business, tangentially related to consulting and selling some of your own services to people, I recommend $1 Million Consultant. The 6th edition is out. You don't need to read the 6th edition. If like the 1st edition talks about if you're a consultant, make sure you get a fax machine. So obviously that's not relevant anymore.
Email. Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, do that. You can learn from any of those books.
Cool. Eli, couple of quick, almost a lightning round, if you will. Quick, easy questions. What's next for you?
So I've got this new book coming out on Avatar Quest. So that's the big thing. I'm pivoting.
Avatar Quest. Interesting.
Avatar Quest. We're working on the subhead there.
No, but it's cool.
Yeah, I'm pivoting away from just doing SEO. Like, I love it, but I want to broaden and really think about how more companies can do better marketing by understanding their customers. So that's the big next thing.
Okay, cool. What do you do? Going to pull the curtain back a little bit here, brother. What do you do to unwind?
I love travel. Because I think it comes from loving different people, loving what makes them tick. I love traveling and going to new places. Ideally, places where I don't understand a word of the language, because then it forces me to really get out of my comfort zone and like figure things out. So I'd say that I always loved traveling. I've been traveling since I was a kid, but like the place that I really traveled the first time I had an official marketing role and was responsible for this, like I went to Japan. And I sat on the subways in Japan and looked over everyone's shoulders to see what they did on their phones. I was like, this is a totally different culture. I want to see how they use their phones. Like, this was 2012. Like, in America in 2012, I think people use Facebook. I don't remember what they were doing, but it was different stuff. I was like, that's cool. Like, if I want to sell something on mobile, I got to understand them, not understand what I do. So I love travel.
Love it. Last question, man. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my own website, or I have a newsletter, which you can find on my website. So elischwartz.co. But like I said earlier, you Google for me, everything you're going to find is me. So it doesn't really matter.
I would hope the SEO guy could pull that off.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter whether you find me on my website or find me on LinkedIn or find me on some article I've written. It all comes back to the same place and you can get in touch. And I love hearing from people and I love answering questions. And if I can help convince you not to spend money on SEO, I'm happy to do that. I mean, my book, I think when my book is on sale, it's like $6 on Amazon. If that's the only $6 someone ever spends on SEO, that is amazing.
The best $6 ever. Yeah.
Because sometimes people need to spend. I met a company, they spent, I think, $180,000. I was talking to them about potentially working with them. They said, oh, we've done SEO. We spent $180,000. And then I said, what did you get for that $180,000? And they're like, I don't know. How should I know that?
Gotta love it, man. Gotta love it.
If you got to spend $6, that could be the best $6 you ever spend in digital marketing.
Yeah. Now, folks, there you go. You hear from the master. Eli, thank you so much for your time and for hanging out with me, buddy. It was great having a chance to chat.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
It was 100% our pleasure here, folks. This is me signing off, saying thank you so much for hanging out with us. And let's do it. Let's work on doing exactly what Eli was talking about. Closing some customers for life, bringing people in and doing what's good for them in such a way that when they got a question, when they have a thought, when they want anything, they only go to one place, the person that's going to tell them the truth. Love it, Eli. Thanks, buddy.